and welcome to the Red Scrolls of Magic Booksplosion live show discussion for the month of June. This was our June pick of the month. So we're going to be discussing this book. It's the first book in a new spin-off trilogy. It takes place after the original Mortal Instruments trilogy, the first 3 books. And we follow Magnus and Alec as they have some adventures in Europe. We will be getting into lots of spoilers. So it's been a while since I forgot all the intro. We're over on Twitter, hashtag #Malexplosion with your questions. We're also going to be trying to keep an eye on the chat, but sometimes it does move fast. So Malexplosion on Twitter is the best way to get us to see the question, but feel free to ask in the chat as well. Before we get into the discussion, we also wanted to announce a couple of things. Jesse, do you want to announce Dear Booksplosion? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Fine. Do you want me to do it? Yeah. So let me just announce really quick that I am ill today, so my voice is not as loud, and also I'm a little gross. So that's happening. Anyway, so Dear Booksplosion is a new segment we're going to be doing live here. The first segment we did was at BookCon 2019. The video is up now. It was right before this if you want to watch this. So you can send emails with your advice, questions about literally anything. It could be like anything as simple as like books keep exploding every time I look at them. How do I deal with this issue? To like something deep. And you can email those questions to emails are like the letter R awesome @gmail.com. And
we watched the video that we just posted this week. It's the Dear Booksplosion live at BookCon. There's more info in the description of that video with the email and everything. And you can also watch that and get a feel for like what questions people asked.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna do it. We have a live show planned for July 17th. It is a Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be live on this channel doing Dear Booksplosion live.
Yeah.
So, yeah, send us your questions and tune in on Wednesday, July 17th.
And its emails are awesome?
Yeah, like Toys R Us. Its emails are awesome.
Okay, I'm putting it in the comments, so email us your advice questions.
Sounds good. And then at the end of this live show, we're going to announce our lineup for the next 4 months. Is that right?
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that as well. We'll announce it on Twitter later. But yeah, okay, let's get into talking about this book.
Can we say we'll spoil up to like the Dark Artifices book 1?
Oh yeah, how far are we going to spoil up to? Let's start with only spoilers for the first 3 Mortal Instruments books and this one.
Okay.
And then we'll give like additional warnings if we're going to spoil anything else.
Okay.
And we're not going to be spoiling Queen of Air and Darkness because
somebody hasn't read it yet.
I'm behind. Okay.
So Jesse, why don't you kick us off then on your thoughts of this book?
Okay, I'll kick us off. So for the most part, I thought this was like a really fun, adventurous story. I really liked seeing Alec and Magnus have some like nice romancy times, even though a lot of them were like disturbed by demons fighting.
Really, it was like Vampire Diaries when Jeremy would always come when they're trying to do sexy things.
But I mean, Magnus deserves that because he kept
he keeps interrupting other people's sexy times.
No, it was really great when Tessa did it.
Like the ultimate.
I was like,
yes, so good. So overall, it was like a really fun adventure. I loved like the comedy aspects that Magnus always brings to the table, of course, and I love Magnus and Alec's banter. I will say that it didn't have like that epic feeling that most of Cassandra Clare books have for me. Like I always come out of them being like, oh, this book was amazing. Like I didn't have that same feeling coming out of this book. It doesn't mean it wasn't good. It just like didn't have that epicness feeling in my opinion. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah. The thing is, if you've read the next 3 books in the Mortal Instruments series, you know also the whole time you're reading this, like Alec's about to do something like bad to Magnus. And like the whole time I was like, how could he do that to him after this? Like, and you also know it was interesting and fun seeing like from City of Fallen Angels, we see like the pictures coming in from Jace's point of view of them like traveling the world together. And then you're reading this and you're like, what the fork were those fucking pictures? And then at the end of it, you see that they like just took it basically in front of a green screen. But yeah, so like the Red Scrolls Magic, I had a hard time getting into it at first because like of my mindset being like everything obviously was fine because we already see them after it. And like there's a name drop of the Red Scrolls of Magic in Queen of Air and Darkness, just like they reference it once for a second. And I was like, oh my God, I thought it was coming after that. Like I thought we were going into Red Scrolls of Magic, but when I found out it was before, I was like, huh. Like, so I didn't get interested in this book really, like in depth, like, what is it called when you're like into it?
Immersed?
No, when you're like hooked into it.
Engrossed?
Can't think of the right word. I'm ill. But anyway, I wasn't like really hooked until they start really like invested. There we go.
Yeah.
And they started like talking about Johnny Rook, and I was like, oh hey. And like if you read like the Ghost of the Shadowhunter Market, you kind of know that what's going on there. I don't want to spoil anything. And then also though, we start seeing people like Malcolm Fade and like I love seeing Aline and Helen.
Yes.
Oh, we get to see how they meet, and it was so cool. That's when it really started picking up for me. But in the beginning, I had a hard time. But then I was like, oh, I want to know about this. So, yeah. And then just at the end, it's just like all of Magnus's lines. I could just really see Tony Stark saying them. And it was just like, it's just mourning that we didn't have the best Magnus in either role. I feel like didn't really pull off the comedy aspect of Magnus yet. Like we need an actor that can really be that snark.
Yeah.
Do it justice.
So yeah, I'm gonna agree with both of you. Just like I'm just gonna like build on what you guys were saying. Because yeah, it was a really fun adventure. Like I enjoyed it, but it wasn't as epic as other Cassandra Clare books have been. And I think a big part of that is that we're only following two characters closely. Like in the other books, we tend to follow more characters and see a lot more perspectives, but we're so close on just Magnus and Alec, which makes the story like smaller scale. And also there's much less stakes because of the whole the prequel problem, which is like we've already seen these characters in the future, so like we know that nothing too bad can happen to them. Like some of the stakes and just like dramatic moments, they don't hit as hard because like we have that knowing like everything is going to be okay for these characters. Or I also spent a lot of time like trying to remember where some of these characters who made cameos like where they were at this point in their story, because now that we've seen like, you know, Raphael is mentioned, we run into him at the party and we see him a couple times, and I had to be like, okay, where in Raphael's storyline are we? Like it's been a while since I read those books and since I like read about him, so I was like, okay,
it was right after he wrote on Simon's head, he gave him the mark of Cain.
Yeah. It was just like trying to figure out like where people were in the grand scheme of things.
I was seeing Lily, like, because
like I like seeing everyone, but I feel like I would have enjoyed this more if I had read it closer to when I read that original trilogy.
Weird timing. Honestly, I think I would have if it was after the third trilogy, like if it just came out then. Because right now it feels very spin-offy in a way that's like it already happened, so it doesn't matter.
It feels very much like a parallel companion to what's the fourth book? Not Heavenly Fire.
Fallen Angels.
Fallen Angels. Yeah, it feels kind of like that, where like that one was kind of about Simon and going in a different direction. Like this feels very much on par with like that era, but like to me it doesn't quite live up to like the Dark Artifices and the Infernal Devices, which have just been like so strong and like really epic. And even though like the Infernal Devices was kind of a prequel, like it still doesn't have that prequel problem where like we know the outcomes of everyone. There was still like so much questions, so much we didn't know. So yeah, I did definitely enjoy this, but not as much as I have previous Cassie books.
You know, really nice. We know that Alec kind of makes up with his father in the Dark Artifices, and he's like shows how proud he is of him. And in this book, Alec's like, I'll never be, you know, my dad will never be proud of me like people are proud of Jace. And it was like really nice to see that. But yeah, I agree. Like it wasn't like this was probably my least favorite Cassandra Clare book as a whole because it just wasn't as intense, you know, like it felt more fluffy. It felt like the Magnus Bane Chronicles, which like start off kind of like rocky, but then get you interested because it's got all these like connections.
Yeah, I'm really curious about what's gonna happen with these next two books because I almost felt like this could have been like a one and done novella.
Yeah.
Of, like, following, because I like the premise where like Magnus started a cult as a joke. Like I think that's hilarious. I loved how we explored that, but it just felt like this could have been a one and done novella. And so what are the next two books going to be? I mean, no, because we let our bad guy go at the end.
Also, like the fact that like we've changed it from adult to YA. I wonder, like in the beginning, we thought it was going to be more explicit kind of sex scenes or something.
Yeah.
Because they kept getting interrupted when they were like about to have an explicit sex scene. So I wonder, what the changes were in that area, or if it just when they wrote it, it ended up not being as like adult feeling. I don't know, or if they made them change it to fit the YA genre. I don't know.
I wonder if it was that because like Alec is what 18, 19, and Magnus is several hundred years old. So like they're not like the typical YA.
Like this first book is more YA, but we're gonna time jump maybe to where they are now.
Are we gonna time jump, or does this whole thing take place?
Well, we know what happens next, so it can't take place right after this. They're involved in City of Fallen Angels.
Yeah.
It has to be maybe something with the baby. Like I feel like we can time jump to between the Dark Artifices and the Mortal Instruments.
Yeah, a time jump another trilogy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Is anyone?
I would be more interested if we did that. If like book 2 takes place after Heavenly Fire, and then book 3
definitely
after Dark Artifices.
We're missing something with them. Like I know we see a story of them in the Shadowhunter market with their kid, the new kid, and the other new kid. Both kids. I feel like there's room for more story there.
Yeah.
Next book is After Adopting Max. Okay, so it is going to be jumped. Yeah, because they adopt Max in the Shadowhunter Academy Chronicles. It's like one of the last books.
This is the kind of book that you only read if you're like a hardcore Shadowhunter fan, or if you're a real big Malik fan, because it'll do that for you. But there's like so many little references. Like we see so many side characters like that come into play and have like storylines in so many different of like these short story collections. Like the whole story of them adopting the kids and like how that the Shadowhunter market and like Magnus, the Bane Chronicles and all that. Like I feel like you almost need to read all that to have like the real context to enjoy this.
And you know what? Even like after reading this, you have more context about Magnus's father, which is kind of worked out to be a really big deal at the end of City of Heavenly Fire. But since we don't have this context, you don't really feel it as much. Like it's kind of just like, oh, he's a prince of hell. Okay, like what does that mean?
Yeah.
This kind of gives you a lot more context to feel the, the weight of that reveal in the end. Like I don't even remember how Alec reacted, but I don't think he cared. Like
I don't remember. That's something that I wanted to like look back and see because like we also have like the whole thing with Helen and Aline, which I loved. That was one of the highlights of this book for me. Like I didn't even know they were in this, let alone like we get to see like their meeting and like their first cute beginnings together. But yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say. I was heading somewhere. Then I started thinking about Helen and Aline.
I know. I was heading somewhere too. I forget. But what I did remember was there's also the Ragnar Fell thing going on. So we're going to see that story. That's something that this is going to cover for sure. Because I think that's got to be in book 2. Because When I asked Cassie about it, she was like, she basically didn't say much except like they'd in here. So I'm interested to hear like how he survived. So that means that like possibly not Max, what the fuck's oh my god, Jonathan Chad, what is his name? The asshole. Sebastian. Sebastian didn't even kill Ragnarfell. Shin Yun went there and she took Ragnarfell and made it look like that so it wasn't even, had nothing to do with what we thought was happening. Like we thought Sebastian came ahead of time and killed him or something.
Yeah. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. Alec has that thing at the end where like he's like, we have to pretend we've never met if we meet each other again.
Yeah.
And so the things like that made me want to like go back and like, where do Alec and Helen like meet for the first time? Like, and
I feel like it's in.
It made it feel like it's a retcon. Like we're going back and like changing things to like
but don't they get married in City of Heavenly Fire? That's when we see Eileen and Helen get married.
Sounds right.
Yeah, it's when we're introduced to the young kids and we were at their wedding, I'm pretty sure.
There's so much I forget about this series.
Yeah.
Only because I've taken such in-depth notes that I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like I should have watched your book talks for like the first 3 books before jumping into this, just so I like have more context.
My first 3 books were like my first book talk.
I know, right? From like 2009. So we're just like, so Jace is pretty great.
They started getting good at like City of Fallen Angels.
All right. Do you want to see if we have some questions?
So if you just joined us, we're taking questions on Twitter or in the chat. Just make sure you put the hashtag Malexplosion next to it so it catches our eye in the chat, and we'll know you're asking a question. Oh, thrown by the Ragnarfell reveal at the end. Am I missing something, or is this leading to a new mystery? So this is from Gabby Fish. And so you're missing something if you haven't read the Dark Artifices yet. You just like, he pops up and you're like, what the fork? Thought he was dead. But we don't know what happened yet. So it's explained in here. It was very much like out of the blue. It's also in, I think it's either the Shadowhunter Ghosts or the Shadowhunter Market or the Shadowhunter Academy that we see. Oh wait, maybe it's the book. Maybe it's a Dark Artifices book where we first see.
I can't remember. There's too much freaking content at this point.
So much content. Yeah, we see like, I believe it. We see Kit talking to a green warlock, and I'm like, that's Ragnarfell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's just so much.
How does she keep track of it again? Does she have like somebody that like helps her?
She must have a Bible and something
or something.
Yeah.
She must have
some kind of like wiki. You can like do custom Wikipedia style things for like your own whatever.
She must have a giant Shadowhunter.
She must have something like charts on the wall, like that one. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia gift.
Yeah, like a huge timeline.
Like strings, like tying things together.
Like heroes when they're like going back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Let's see. If you were a warlock and could choose your warlock mark, what would you choose? Yeah, Shinyan's face was like really scary.
I was gonna say not the one that Shinyan has, because as soon as we found out about her warlock mark, I was like, okay, that's a villain thing. Like, who is this person who cannot emote and who is like very, like that'd be very scary.
The thing with Shinyan, like, I feel like it was like a twist that you could really see coming.
Yeah.
As opposed to a lot of her twists are like,
whoa.
Yeah.
They didn't see that coming.
I think it was also kind of clear because like we know that there are no like outside consequences to this book on the main series. So like Shinyan isn't like still in Magnus's life as a friend. So like she's either gonna die or she's the villain.
Right.
I mean, she's not dead though. She's alive somewhere.
Yeah, but we have 2 more books.
Yeah, I feel like she's not good. She'll come into play in the next book maybe. But with Shinyan, like I almost dismissed that idea because I thought it was too obvious. And then it was. So I was like, oh.
Yeah.
What was the question? Oh, your mark. The best warlock marks are when oh my god, like Hypatia with like she has stars for pupils. Like I get
Oh yeah,
Hypatia.
that'd be cool.
Yeah. I can't think of like any other marks.
I like that Katarina. She just has blue skin.
That's an intense one though. Like people will be like warlock.
Yeah, but it's just very Lainey Taylor. It's like Strange the Dreamer. Magnus's isn't that bad either. Like the different pupils.
Yeah.
Wait, Magnus has another one though. He also doesn't have a belly button. Is that right?
Maybe.
I feel like I've heard that. Haven't you heard that somewhere?
Yeah, but was that like a true or false thing? I can't remember. But
I feel like Magnus doesn't have a belly button. And that was like part of his warlock mark.
Ragnar Fels is like very extensive. He's green and he has horns.
Yeah.
I googled it and he does not have a belly button.
Nice.
Is that a warlock mark though, or is that just because, like, do other warlocks have that? Is that part of his mark? I
don't know.
Not saying on Google.
What I was gonna say is, at the event for Clean of Darkness, Cassie did like some trivia to give away some merch, and the question was like, what is Hypatia Vex's warlock mark? And I was like, and no one else had their hand up, but she was like, not you, I can send you this. I was like, but I know it. And I was like so bummed I didn't get to answer the question.
Was it mentioned in this book? Because I don't think I knew it.
It was mentioned once in the other book, and I took notes.
Okay, because I was gonna say like we saw Hypatia, but just for a minute. Like I didn't remember.
Yeah, I just
know about her pupil.
That it was like a star pupil, like it was like a pun. Like I'm the star pupil.
That's funny.
We have a question from the chat. This is from the song Budgie. They ask, what did you think about the whole reveal of the cult's leader and the scene before and after?
Me and Bernard. Oh wait.
Yeah, of that whole thing. I mean, I thought it was the same way I feel about most of this book. Is it was fun, but it was not as epic as I'm used to with a Cassie book.
Yeah.
Because like the whole like reveal of like the cult leader and like then like Bernard was like, no, we're turning against you too. Like it was very sort of lighthearted and kind of cheesy and campy a little bit,
Right.
in a fun way. But like I'm used to more of a balance between like the humor and like the epicness with Cassie books.
Yeah. I mean, like Sierra asked, does the knowledge that Cassie wanted to write this book before City of Fallen Angels and the publisher wouldn't allow it change any opinions? And I mean, I wonder if it's because it was just like, was it because LGBTQ?
I think yeah, because her author's note in the end of the arc, I don't know if, or it was the acknowledgement. It was kind of like an author's note acknowledgement. She talked about how like she wanted to do more with Alec and Magnus for a while, but like publishers and librarians were like, no, it's like inappropriate content. So she would just try to like include them in their story as much as she could in the main trilogy. And like, she's just like, she really wanted to write this. So yeah, I mean, I see it. It doesn't change my opinion on it much because like it still came out at this time and like we still all read it at this time. But it does make me wish it came out earlier even more.
Yeah. It would have made it very interesting when we finally like met Aline and Helen in like way further on.
Yeah.
Because we would have been like, oh, we saw them and yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I even think it would have been better to have this series before the Dark Artifices, like even if it was after all of the Mortal Instruments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like with the Dark Artifices, we go so far in the future. It's like, did we need this? Like, it was super fun, but like, does it add a ton to like the overall story?
Right.
Yeah. At this point, like, it doesn't. It's just kind of for like
Yeah.
I mean, but maybe though, since the third book's gonna take place after Queen of Air and Darkness.
Yeah,
it'll
that's
build-
the thing. Like, it's hard to tell from just this one installment. Like, I want to see where this trilogy goes. Like, what's the arc of this trilogy? What's
Yeah.
the direction that we're heading?
Because usually this is even,
like,
this is even how her short story collections work. Like, it's just laying the foundation, and then toward the end, you're like, holy fuck. So, like, I feel like it might be like we have to read this to set the foundation for what she wants to do in the long run.
Yeah.
yeah. It might be foundation for Wiccan powers. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Hopes or predictions for the second book?
Hmm.
You want to?
I don't even know, man.
I mean, I think we're going to learn more about Ragnar Fell in the next book because we see him in Dark Artifices. So whatever happens has to have already happened.
Right.
And what do you think? Lainey asked, what do you think of Alex's point of view on Jace, Simon, and Clare? It was nice to get it. Like, I really liked him talking about Jace and how, like, he's more comfortable, like, getting to know someone in the way that Jace got to know him, which was just, like, hanging around him and being annoying. And then, like, eventually the annoyance turned to, like, care and love and affection.
That's the Herondale friendship way.
And when he was talking about, like, what's Jace doing, and she's like, Jace is playing video games with Simon, and I like specifically remember that scene in City of Fallen Angels. I was like, oh my god.
I loved. I don't remember who it was, but maybe it was Lily Chen, that vampire. I don't know. Someone like really shipped Jason Simon and was like, "Are you sure they're not together? Like, he has vampire. Like, he let a vampire bite him. Like, they sound like they're together."
Oh my gosh.
I really love that because that's also exactly how I felt. But like, I think it was book 2 of the Mortal Instruments. I was like, my main ship is Simon and Jace.
When I heard that, I thought it was just so funny because Jace like really doesn't like Simon at that time. He was just like doing it because of Clare. Like, that's when Clare was like straight up dating Simon.
Right.
I loved when Alec asked Jace for like dating advice, kind of, and like, but he like didn't like really specifically say like I'm asking for dating advice. He was like alluding to it, and Jace is like talking about demon fighting or something.
Yeah, Jace said, "Okay, here's the battle tactics," and Alex like this. Put Isabel back on the phone.
And Jace did say like make a move, and I feel like that was like what he had to do.
No.
I love at the end how like when they're finally getting to have like their romantic moment together, Magnus is like, wait, do you want to wait? Like, we can wait. And Alex like, no, I've been fucking trying to do this whole entire time.
He's like, I'm gonna jump out the window if this doesn't happen right now.
I'm so tired of all the interruptions.
That was really funny. I also like when he was like, I tried to text something pithy, but like I ended up texting hi to Raphael.
Yeah, I love seeing those like moments where we got to know Alex so much better. Because in the original trilogy, we don't get to know him as much, and like it's through Mary's eyes, so he's like off standoffish and kind of mean to her. Even
he just comes
he's not as like quippy and like funny as Jace or Magnus, but seeing his sense of humor and also like how he views the world and stuff, and he's like could write something funny, but he's just like hi, like that's so very Alec, and it's so cute.
Yeah, and like just like just like watching him watch Magnus like try on clothes, he's like he looks so good and everything. It's just like really nice to see that point of view because you do get the impression that he doesn't care, but like he does care, just doesn't like say it.
Yeah,
his trouble communicating it.
Right, and I feel like it's also too because he spent a majority of his life being suffocated and he's been put in
like
this
repressing all his feelings,
and so he's like having to like untangle all of that, and it's
Yeah.
And like seeing how Magnus is helping him do that as well.
Yeah. And like, oh my gosh, this conversation with Aline when he like wasn't picking up on her saying that like she liked girls. I was just like, Alec, can you just like find it's just like, because I guess he's also clouded by the fact that like he really loved Jason, still had a crush on him at the time when he kissed Aline, so he was more like just, you know, like uptight.
And also, he's kind of defensive about the loving downworlders, and so he thinks that like Aline is judging Helen for like being bi and being like a downworlder, and he's like just missing it completely. Like her curiosity and like follow-up questions is not about like a judgy thing against her.
Yeah. I was just like, can you like, what do you say?
Like, Alec, you're
She's trying to like bond with you. Down. Oh my god. But it was also really nice to like kind of see Helen in her own space, because we only really get to see her try to be a mom to like all these kids when she hasn't been there for years, and to just see her like on her gap year and like being like super bossy.
Yeah. Like really trying to like prove herself and be like, I'm not with the downworlders.
Yeah, like getting a feel for her. It's really nice. Do we have more questions?
I mean, it just makes it like kind of more heartbreaking about what happens in.
Oh, it's such a bummer. Yeah, I know.
Like she's working so hard, and she's like, the Fae aren't bad, and like she's like trying to stand up for everything, and then we all know what happens at the end of Heavenly Fire.
Oh, it's so bad. I was like actually getting confused about when that happened, like just in terms of like when the treaty happened. Like,
yeah. Wait, okay, I'm confused about the timeline. Are Helen and Aline married when the treaty happens?
So they're married in City of Heavenly Fire, I think.
Yeah.
The City of Heavenly Fire only takes place like a couple months after this book, right?
Unless it's in Lady Midnight. No, but Lady Midnight, they're already gone. She's already gone.
Yeah.
So, wait. It's in the Simon Chronicles. It's in the Shadow Under Academy.
Okay.
It's in between.
Okay, so in Heavenly Fire, they're not yet married, but they're still
Together. Yeah.
Okay.
And then they're sent to live on the fucking island in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
For years, and then she gets back in the third one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, they get married in Shadow Under Academy.
I hope they're in the rest of this trilogy. I want to see more of them.
Yeah.
You get a taste of them in the
Simon.
In Queen of Air and Darkness. In Simon, you do. Did you read those? You get.
I know. I watched your detailed book talk on them because I didn't want to read them. I didn't want to buy them individually, and then I bought them.
Simon, I think he talks to Helen, and like they talk about her relationship with Leigh, and we see them get married, and it's really nice. And you see the Blackthorn kids again when they're like still younger. But yeah, you don't really get a feel for them again until Queen of Air and Darkness when they're like out of exile. It's not a spoiler, Jesse.
Not spoilers, Jesse. We just
literally you just see them, and they're just there in the beginning of Queen of Air and Darkness.
Are they in the Ghost of the Shadow Market Academy?
No, that's all like other stuff.
Okay.
And that's like mostly following Gem, right?
I've only read one story from it, so I didn't.
Following Gem, but it's mostly like you're learning about all the kids you're gonna see in the chain of gold. And you're also seeing stuff that you need to know for Queen of Air and Darkness, like backstory that makes the stuff in Queen of Air and Darkness like so much more pertinent. And stuff about Gem and Tessa that you don't want to miss. You don't want to miss.
Have you read all of Shadowhunter now? Did you get that and read the last two
I need
stories?
to buy the fucking book. I want to get it. Like, I want to just buy the stories. I hate this. I already paid so much money for all those stories.
Yeah, that's why I was waiting for the bind up for the Simon books.
I like reading them on my phone because like I can finish them in like really.
Yeah, because they're so short. You can like finish each one in like less than an hour.
Yeah, why don't they they want you to buy the book? I know, and I want the book. Just wish like they send us so much stuff that we don't necessarily read, and like I would read that. I'm like, I haven't read it to me. Let's see. Aren't Helen and Leigh in the end of Lord of Shadows? They might be. I can't remember. I can't remember when they like come back, but I know they're there.
Yeah, it might be at the end of Lord of Shadows.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is at the end of Lord of Shadows because Lord of Shadows ends at like the Institute with like that big whole showdown thing, and I think they're there.
It's in Alicante, that big whole showdown.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're either there or they show up like right at the beginning of Queen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we have any other questions before we go into our lineup?
Here's a question about, do you prefer Bane Chronicles, Shadowhunter Academy, or Ghosts of the Shadowhunter Market? I think, Christine, you're the only one who's read all of them.
Yeah,
so what?
I think my favorite's definitely the Shadowhunter Academy, because I love Simon, and you get a taste for so many things that are coming up that's so exciting. There's so many of those stories I really loved, like the one about the circle. Like we literally get like a prequel story about them in the circle, and it was so cool. I just was like geeking out the whole time. And then there's like the story about like Will and Tessa and their kids, and like bringing their kids to Shadowhunter Academy, and like their kids becoming friends, and it was just amazing.
I love the academy setting too, because it's like, let's go to Shadowhunter school. Like I love that.
The first couple stories there weren't that strong, but it's like the same in every single bind up. Like the first couple stories are maybe like the weakest or just like the least relevant, and then like you get better and better. So with Go to the Shadowhunter Market, there's a lot of stuff about people that maybe you don't care about yet, but then it starts to tie together, and you're like, whoa. So I'm excited to finish those. There's just like there's not as much. I mean, there is Jem and Tessa in those too, but it's not like the same because we're not like with their kids, because Will has to be there for the kids. I don't know if I'm stepping on.
Have you read Bane? Have you read all of Bane Chronicles, or?
No, I didn't read like the last 3 stories.
Yeah.
Does it like connect with like does it add?
No, so there's stuff in there that's going to connect with like
There's an echo.
Yeah, there is.
It's me, I think. Let me refresh.
So there's stuff in the Bane Chronicles that's going to connect with Chain of Gold that I feel like I want to go back and reread.
Okay.
Yeah, you see a story with young James, and I want to go back and reread that one. And that's where like I think I stopped. I might have more than 3 left.
Right.
No, but those are going to be really interesting to read since they were so long ago she wrote them.
Yeah. I want to read it. I just didn't know like how much it connected with anything. I just thought it was like.
Yeah, it's frustrating because like again, that was the first bind up, and the first 2 stories you're just like, who gives a crap? Like I mean, you give a crap because it's Magnus, but it doesn't feel like Cassie much because it's not like as intense and like heavy and like interesting.
Yeah.
But I didn't give it enough of a chance because once it started getting better, I was like done with it already. What's your favorite scene from Red Scrolls of Magic?
Ooh. There's a lot of fun ones.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite is probably when Magnus wakes up and he's like tied to the chair, and he is like, I was not surprised to wake up tied to a chair. And like Shin-Yun is trying to be like, we're going to sacrifice you. And he just keeps making like these really deadpan jokes. And it was just so Magnus in the best way. And I love him.
I like that scene where he like makes them go shopping before the party. He's like, does he say like, get in, demon hunters, we're going shopping or something?
Yeah.
Those reference.
I also love how him and Shin-Yun keep like coming on all these elaborate costumes, and like Alec is talking to the shopkeeper like, where do you get this stuff? And she's like, this isn't our stock. Like, I'm so confused right now. Yeah, that moment was fun. I really just love the whole ending sequence. Like, I usually don't like it when our main couples like split up in a book, but when Magnus and Alec were split up, like Agnes was with Helen and Aline, and like getting the cavalry together, and Magnus was with Shin-Yun and like waking up and being all sarcastic and fun. Like, I really liked that part.
Yeah. I like the scene where Magnus tells us what happened to the stepfather, because I feel like that's something we've never heard. I didn't think it was like I thought it was a little repetitive when we heard it again, but like just to get to the end part to see that like his dad.
Yeah.
But I was like, why are we? It's not. I think we didn't have to talk about it. Maybe then we could have just been like, he told Alec, and then here we could have seen it.
It was also kind of similar with what happened with Shenyun, who like told her story twice, like just adding like a little bit more like info.
Well, hers was felt more different because she was actually buried alive.
Yeah.
That was a big change. Yeah, that was traumatic. And it was really interesting. I feel like Magnus's take on like why he felt like he had to, you know, be nice to her and like try to care for her because he did this to her and she was him if he hadn't have. I also didn't know that he was like raised by silent brothers. Like were we privy to this? Maybe it's in the Magnus Bane
Chronicles.
Yeah. Because that was really interesting that they found him and taught him how to use his magic.
I'm interested when Magnus created the Red Scrolls of Magic. Like, when did he start this cult?
Because I feel like in his early, like the 1200s or something.
Yeah, it must have been like really freaking early because I know that the Joseon period in Korean history, which is where Shenyun is from, like started in like the 1300s. So like, this must have been really. But like, when did he?
The 1200s.
Create this? Like, when did he create it though?
I feel like it was like in the 1200s.
You think it was that? It was before.
It was before. Yeah. Yeah, it had to be.
Interesting. We've never gone back that far. Like the earliest time period we've done is Will and Tessa.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we'll ever go back that far.
It could open up a whole bunch of new history. Shit.
So Ginger Spice asked, what do you think of Alec letting go of Shenyun at the end? And I think this is going to come back to bite him in the ass.
Oh, yeah.
Just like, I mean, Jesse hasn't read Queen of Iron Darkness, but there's kind of a theme like this in Queen of Iron Darkness. And I feel like it's going to be similar to that, where it's just like, it's like you never, it's a 50-50 risk every single time. You never fucking, it's just such a risk. It's such a, she was so bad. She like murdered lots of people.
Yeah, but the thing is, she did, like, she's really damaged from like everything that happened to her. Like she needs, like I think the whole thing about like she was Magnus's like dark mirror self was like really interesting because Magnus is like, I could have ended up like her if like things went different for me. So like I sympathize with her, but that scene, I thought that maybe she would like go off and like go into hiding and like maybe work on being better. But that scene with her and Ragnar at the end, I'm like, no, she's brewing something terrible. Alec, you made a horrible mistake.
Yeah, like it was the second he let her free and she didn't say something nice, she was like, Magnus is hiding so much from you. You don't even know. I was like, this bitch.
Like put the chains back on her. Like
I would have immediately just been like, never mind. Tackle her. He was like, you better run. And I was like, Alec, you've made an error.
I think that's out of character for Alec a lot, like almost too much, I feel like, at this point.
Yeah, he hasn't gotten there yet.
Yeah, I feel like he hasn't gotten there yet. I feel like he still is so like indoctrinated by the clave that like.
Well, I think in this moment, after just watching Magnus like not kill her, not do anything terrible, he got the knife. He was trying to like emulate that. He was like, "This is what I admire most about Magnus."
Yeah, but they also talked about how like the clave was gonna like lock her up forever. Like she wasn't gonna die. Like she was.
No, they said that they'll execute her.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, she's fucking evil, so.
She's pretty bad. The thing is, like, either like they need to come up with like a reform school for these villains,
something like that.
Like, because this is the
like we need to not let her go. They need to keep her, and like Magnus needs to like talk with her and like rehabilitate her. Like don't free her into the wild.
This is like a huge dilemma that you see in the Dark Artifices series. It's like, do we punish the people who are young and like who are raised to be
right,
or do you like try to reform them? But like if you try to reform them, you risk them doing something again. Terrible.
Yeah. Can you reform them in time? Like
it's like it's a theme that really ties into Dark Artifices. So I feel like this is going to conclude after the Dark Artifices.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like you're either the Julian or the Emma.
Jessie Reed, Queen of Air and Darkness.
All right, do we want to talk about our
Lineup?
Okay, let's talk about our lineup.
Yeah. So
Our July book of the month is going to be
King
of Flowers by Leigh Bardugo. This came out earlier this year. I want to say January, and all of us have procrastinated on reading it. So we thought, let's read it this month.
Yeah, I feel like we've also done Crooked Kingdom in July before, so this is like Bardugo for July.
This is the first book in a duology. I kind of want to reread the Grisha trilogy before reading this.
I'm gonna listen to the audiobook. I'm excited because all the books are excellent.
This does take. I feel like you need to read all of the Grisha books before you read this one.
And also, like, we're doing this in prep for the show, even though the show doesn't have the rights to King of Stars.
Yeah, the show's not coming out for a while.
Well, they're filming it right now in Budapest.
Is book 2 coming out in January, or is it like later?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how this series is coming out with her adult series.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We shall see.
Oh, we shall see. But I'm very excited about this.
Yeah.
Then for August,
we're
doing a reread of Looking for Alaska.
Wait, it's a reread for you and I, Jessie. It's Christine's first time, yeah?
Oh, no. I read it
You did read it.
We didn't talk about it, yeah.
I was gonna say, I feel like I remember this.
Yeah, we're rereading it in prep for the show that's coming out on Hulu.
Yeah, in October.
I was very excited to see John do like a Q&A video with the actors. So like,
it was a really great video, yeah.
And then in September, Frankly in Love.
Frankly in Love. This title is Frankly in Love with Jessie, but it's really just
like by Nicola Yoon's husband, David Yoon. Yeah. Yeah, it's not called Frankly in Love with Christine. They sent us personalized copies, which is really cool.
I didn't get a personalized copy. But yeah, this comes out in early September. So we're reading it as our September book of the month. It is a debut novel. It's a contemporary kind of a rom-com about a Korean American boy whose parents like really want him to date a Korean American girl. So he forms this fake relationship with a Korean American girl so that he can actually date someone he really wants. So it has like fake dating and family relationships.
I didn't know any of this. What a spoiler.
That's like a very basic premise. So yeah, it sounds like a really great.
I'm excited.
Very excited for this. Yeah.
And then in November,
October, not November. You skipped too far ahead.
In October, I'm very excited. We're reading the new Ruta Sepetys book.
Yes. What is that called?
The Fountains of Silence.
Fountains of Silence. And that comes out on October 1st.
Yes.
Yes, that is going to be our October book of the month.
Yeah. If you haven't read Ruta Sepetys before, you should definitely pick up Salt to the Sea. It's amazing.
Yeah, we read that a year or two ago, and it was so good.
It was so good. And Ruta herself is just like the nicest, sweetest, most charismatic, eloquent human being. Like, she's amazing. Like, you read her stuff.
Yeah, her books are they're so well put together. Like, you can tell that, especially, I'm historical, so, like, you can tell she put in so much research and, like, thought and care and, like, a beautifully written, beautifully constructed story. So,
honestly, like,
I'm so excited to read more by her.
Yeah, watch the video that I did with her. Like, I didn't know what to expect because I've never met her before, and she was just amazing. Like, I could just listen to her talk all day.
Yeah.
Talk with Ruta Sepetys. So good.
So yeah, those are our next 4 books, our lineup for the next 4 months. We'll be announcing November and December a little bit later. It's kind of far off for those ones. But yeah, now you guys know what we're reading for the rest of the summer and the beginning of fall.
we run through them really quick again just to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, July.
King of Scars. August, Looking for Alaska. September, Frankly in Love. October, The Fountains of Silence, or Fountains of Silence.
Yeah. We have to add those in the description, but we'll also tweet
I will also tweet about it, and we'll be talking about all these books much more in the months to come.
And hopefully we'll see you for our Dear Booksplosion.
Yeah, Dear Booksplosion is on the 17th. It's a Wednesday. Right here on this channel, we're going to do a live show. Please email your questions if you have any. And the King of Scars live show we have scheduled for August 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern, which is a Thursday. So yeah, we'll tweet out all this information too, so it's like written down somewhere for you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, y'all.
Yeah, I think that's everything.
All right.
Okay, so we'll see you next month for 2 live shows.
Yeah, 2 live shows next month. Oh boy. I'm excited for Dear Booksplosion because you guys don't have to read a book to attend that live show.
It's going to be super fun. Definitely send us your advice questions. We all have questions. And don't be afraid to send it to us. They could be anonymous. They could be anonymous, kind of however you like. So don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Christine.
I'm Kat.
I'm Jesse. We're Booksplosion. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next month. Bye.
Bye.